Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller. We're sitting here today on today's episode talking about the upcoming CPEC Job Fair that'll be taking place at the Radisson Hotel, Harrisburg, in Camp Hill for the 31st annual CPEC Job Fair on Tuesday, February the 20th from 10 to 3. We're sitting here with Career Services Director Steve Hassinger. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And we're also sitting with a student worker from Career Services, Sharon Kelly. Sharon, welcome to your first episode of the Nightly News Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You are quite welcome. So, Steve, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today is what the CPEC Job Fair is. I know that we had you on previously when we did the Job and Internship Fair here at Central Penn, and we talked about some of these things, but CPEC's a lot different. So I was wondering if you could talk about how CPEC's going to be different, maybe for a student who went to a job fair here on campus, how they might prepare differently, or how just in general what to expect when they get to CPEC.
Okay, well, the main difference with the CPEC Job and Internship Fair is that there's a consortium of 19 colleges and universities that go together to do this Job and Internship Fair every year. And they're schools from the central Pennsylvania area, so schools such as Messiah College, Shippensburg University, Penn State Harrisburg, York College, and so forth. Because there's 19 schools going together, there's a lot of different majors that are represented and different types of students. So some employers will come out to a job fair that's being done by a consortium like this that might not come to 19 individual campuses. They know that they can go to one place and they can recruit from all of those different schools. So we particularly see a lot of federal agencies, state agencies, large companies that maybe would not come just to Central Penn to recruit. So that's the main thing that makes it different. Obviously, the other thing is that it's off campus. It's not held here in our conference center. We will provide transportation if students need it. We have anywhere from 80 to 100 companies typically that will attend this event. We couldn't accommodate that many companies here on campus. The most that we've had here on campus in my time here since 2002, I think, has been 56 companies at one event.
So it's still relatively, I mean, it's the same type of thing, except at CPEC, you might have a little bit more of a wide variety of different business owners there, companies there, that are going to be able to maybe appeal to all of our majors here, but maybe some in addition, or maybe have some jobs that, may offer a communications position or may offer an IT position within the larger scope of their business.
Absolutely. There's going to be a wide variety of companies there. And one of the things that I always encourage students to do is do some research before they attend, find out what type of companies are planning to be there. On the CPEC website, which is cpec.info, students can go on the website and they can go under candidate information for the fair, and they can see a link to all the companies that have registered. I looked at it this morning. There were 47 companies up there so far. As we're recording this, we're still about 5 weeks out from the event. So I would think that we're going to be somewhere around that 80 to 90 company mark by the time that the job fair rolls around. And when they go on there and they see the list of companies, they can see a description, because there may be companies that they've never heard of. There were some companies on there this morning that I'd never heard of. So you can see a description, you can link to their website, and you can also see what types of majors they're most interested in. Communications, you mentioned, is a broad major. So somebody in communications could work in a lot of different types of settings. And they might not see communications in the name of a company, but that doesn't mean that that company doesn't have a need for them.
Well, and one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that every company in 2018 and beyond needs communication students. And that's also the same can be said for many other legal studies.
Right.
Every company needs to have at least some type of consultant on legal issues. IT is also a position that every single company that you are going to run into needs to have some type of IT. So, I mean, and all across the board. Many of our majors are in extremely high demand, and this gives an opportunity for maybe a student that wasn't quite sure where their company fit would be, that they can talk to some of these people and ask about their public relations department or their IT department or their legal department or their business department. So basically almost any one of our majors are going to be able to have a wide array of different opportunities. So one of the things that I wanted to talk also with you about today, Steve, is for a student who maybe has never been to a job fair before, can we just maybe review some of the keys of preparation for a job fair so you can maybe set up a little checklist for a student to be prepared?
Yeah. So one of the main things you want to do is get a resume ready and have a good professional resume that you can take with you. Some employers may not take a resume at the job fair. They might refer you to their website, but you still want to engage them in conversation. Tell them a little bit about yourself. Tell them what types of positions you're looking for and what types of positions within their company might be a good fit. But there are employers who will take a resume at the job fair, so they definitely want you to be prepared. Plus, you're going to need a resume at the registration desk when you sign in. Because if you're not from one of the 19 schools that goes together to plan this event, you do have to pay to go to the event. So you want to have a resume. Second, I would prepare what we call our elevator speech. Okay, and that can be just kind of your little 30 to 90 second commercial. This is who I am. This is what my major is. This is what I'm looking for. Maybe a little bit about what I have to offer to a company. Okay, so you definitely want to prepare that. You want to dress for success. So you want to dress professionally. And if students are not prepared with professional wardrobe clothing here at college, Career Services does have some free professional clothing that we can try to fit you with and get you prepared for the job fair. Okay, so you want to dress very nicely. For guys, I would recommend at minimum a nice dress shirt, dress pants, and a tie. For ladies, might be a dress, a nice pantsuit, skirt, whatever you're comfortable with, but something that looks very professional and that you would wear if you're going to a job interview. Because this is a series of mini interviews, really. You're getting face-to-face with employers. And the nice thing about going to a job or an internship fair is it gets you past just uploading a resume to a website. Even though you might still upload your resume, you're engaging in conversation with them. So having a resume, dressing professionally, preparing your elevator speech, researching the organizations that are going to be there. Those are four of the main things I would say I would do to prepare.
Sharon, I'd like to turn my next question to you. And my first question is, you've had an opportunity to be the work study in at Career Services. What would you say, just from being in the office and experiencing what the Career Services office has to offer, what are some tips that you might be able to give some students?
Well, the thing is, if people are looking for jobs, the Career Center is a wonderful place. You'll be able to do mock interviews if you're having an interview the next day. Also, as Steve said, we offer professional clothing for those that need it. We sometimes have clothing fairs like every once a term, so that'll be a great opportunity to look for some clothes for any job fair, any interview, you name it. So,
well, I also wanted to ask you, as a student here at the college that has had this opportunity to work with Career Services, can you give some additional tips? Now, obviously, Steve talked about some of the things that in a general sense. What about Central Penn students? What advice can you give from your previous, because I know we were talking off air, you said not only have you been to Central Penn's job fair, you've also been at some, outside of the affiliation of the college. So can you give a couple of things that maybe worked out really well for you in your past experiences?
Well, for my past experiences, let's say this. When I prepare for my job fairs at Harrisburg, I would look at the different companies and see what types of majors they're looking for, because you don't want to go to a table that doesn't accept, let's say, accounting, for example. So you do want to make sure you look at the description below and also see what kinds of majors. And if it's all majors, then you can go ahead and go to that table. So the number one tips that I would recommend is by looking at the descriptions and seeing what kinds of majors they accept. And second, when you arrive at the job fair, be sure to prepare an elevator speech, as Steve said, and make sure you ask if they want to see your resume. Otherwise, they're going to think you're not interested in that job.
Well, one thing that I always noticed, and I've actually had a lot more of experience with job fairs working with you over the past 5 years since I've been here, one of the most important things to me, I remember last term I was sort of coaching some of my freshman students, and the biggest thing that I coached them with was have an engaged personality. So eye contact, body language, very important. Obviously, you talked about the dress. That speaks for itself. When you're coming to a job fair, you should be dressed appropriately. But in my personal opinion, it's those first 15 to 30 seconds of that first impression that you're making could and very well might plant the seeds for a future job or a callback for an interview. I've talked to several students who at CPEC last year, Sherry Long, for example, talked in our last podcast when we talked, Sarah was in talking about alumni events. We talked briefly about CPEC. Well, Sherry went in not expecting anything, walked out with an internship.
Right.
And so, especially for students who are, no matter where they are, internship can be done with approval earlier than your last term. And that's one of the things that in the comm department we're trying to do, is to try to get people out on their internships earlier on in their senior year as well. So even if you are a freshman or sophomore, going to CPEC can have huge advantages to you as well, right, Steve?
Absolutely. You start to get to know what kind of options are out there. And you use Sherry as an example. I mean, Sherry went up to a company that did manufacturing, basically. I mean, you wouldn't think that they have a need for a communications position. And actually, they didn't realize at the time that they had a need for a communications intern.
What's really cool about that, Steve, is I actually went down and did a site visit with her. I mean, if you would have walked into this office, you'd have been blown away, because it absolutely was a manufacturing facility. But she had so much, she had, professionalism. She had her resume in hand. She knew what she wanted. She was there for an internship. But even still, maybe even students that are freshmen, sophomore, can you talk about some other reasons why it might be beneficial for them to go to CPEC?
Well, some of these companies might also, and they do, not might, they do offer part-time positions as well. So maybe you're looking for a part-time job related or unrelated to your major while you're in college. So there are a lot of places here that also tend to hire people for part-time positions. Again, just trying to make those connections. Maybe you meet somebody, a recruiter, at one of these events, and you're really interested in that company, and then you follow up with a LinkedIn invitation, and you connect with them that way, and you maintain some periodic contact, via LinkedIn or whatever, email or a call or whatever, over the next year or two as you're continuing in your education and getting ready for your internship. You have those relationships develop, so when it comes time for internship, I've even had employers who have come to me and said, hey, Sharon, we've met her at several of your job fairs. Is she getting ready to graduate? Because we'd really like to talk to her. So you already have that relationship that you've developed, and you're building those connections.
Let me ask you, Sharon, as someone who, obviously you said you've gone to several job fairs. Let's go back to that first job fair that you went to in college. How nervous were you?
I was very nervous. I didn't think that I was going to succeed on elevator speeches. And second, on some tables, I just gave a resume, and then they were like, thank you, and then I left. And I kind of felt guilty, because this is very important to me. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out on better opportunities. So, and another thing I would suggest is try to ask as many questions as you can, so that way they know that you're interested.
Well, and where I was sort of going with this that you alluded to is that first time you go there, you walk in, especially to something like CPEC, when it's on campus. It's in a familiar space, it's in a conference center, it's a place where most people have been. So even though when you walk in there, it's still surprising, I can imagine that CPEC might be even more intimidating. Steve, talk about the importance of going to job fairs just as practice for down the line when there's a lot more on the line.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, these are kind of a series of mini interviews, because every time you're talking to an employer, it's a mini interview, basically. So as Sharon said, that first time, you're going to be extremely nervous. And I will be present at CPAC.
I will day. Too. So if anyone needs any help, I am a resource.
Right. And Kristen Fike, I think, will be there most of the day, our internship coordinator as well. So, if you're really nervous and you're not comfortable going up and talking to somebody, come and find us. We'll practice with you a little bit. We'll practice with you beforehand if you want to make an appointment and come and see us. But we'll also do introductions. I've walked with students to a table, and particularly with recruiters that I know fairly well. And, I've done that initial introduction. Hey, this is Sharon Kelly. She's an accounting student at Central Penn College. Sharon, this is John Jones from ABC Company. I think the two of you ought to chat a little bit, and then you start chatting, get a little more comfortable. I just fade out of the picture. So I know it can be very intimidating. So each time you do this, each time you go and you prepare, I think it gets a little easier. You get a little more comfortable having those conversations.
Practice makes perfect.
Well, perfect practice makes perfect, yes.
And I really think, to me, that it really, over time, the more you go, the more comfortable you are. It's just like doing anything. And I talk about this, students with doing podcasts, with writing, with giving presentations in front of an audience. It's an uncomfortable situation to put yourself out there like that. To do a podcast and to put everything out there, to write an article, to put yourself out there, to give a speech and be subject to criticism. You're never going to improve unless you do it more often and practice. So, last term I remember taking my freshman seminar class to the job fair, and I had probably 5 or 6 people say, "What in the world? Why are we doing this? Why are we taking a day out of class to go to this?" And I said, "You don't understand. This experience is going to pay great dividends down the line when it comes closer to either an interview or just going to another job fair in the future when you actually are looking for an internship or a career position." So one final question that I want to touch on before we call it a podcast today from the two wonderful folks from Career Services. We're being joined by student worker Sharon Kelly, and we're being joined by Career Services Director Steve Hassinger. You do and you've touched on some of the things that you do as Career Services, but because we're releasing this podcast just under a month from CPEC, let's talk about what services you offer to get our students ready to and prepared to make a positive impact at the job fair.
So 3 things that I'll just highlight right now. One is resume reviews or resume preparation. So some students may not have a resume, or they did a resume in high school, but it was kind of a high school resume. It doesn't include the things they're doing in college. So make an appointment with us. We'll sit down with you. We'll help you just tweak and fine-tune your resume. If you've got one, it's pretty good. You just need to kind of update it. If you're starting from scratch, we'll give you the tools that you need to start from scratch and have a good polished resume when you go to the job fair. Number 2, we mentioned we can help you with professional wardrobe. Now, we don't have every size for every person, but, come and see us early, and, we'll work with you. If we don't have what you're looking for, we'll see if we can help you find, what it is that you need if you need professional clothing. Number 3, we talked about the elevator speech. We have worksheets that we can give you that can help you start with crafting your elevator speech. You can practice with us. If you want to treat us as an employer and do some mocks where you're walking up to the table and introducing yourself, we'll be happy to take that role and let you practice just coming up, introducing yourself, giving us your elevator speech, and talking about how you might engage that employer in the job fair. So those are 3 things that are fairly basic, but really if you can do those 3 things and you can do them well, you're dressed well, you've got a good resume, and you can speak to the employer, those are things that are going to go a long way to giving you success at the job fair.
Sharon, from a student's perspective, let's give another quick couple bullet points. What can students do? Say it's 2 days before the job fair. We've already talked to Steve. We have a nice resume. We've got something nice to wear. What are maybe a couple of the last-minute things you can do to be prepared?
The thing to be prepared is don't overthink the questions that you're about to ask, otherwise you will forget. And second, yes, be sure to bring resumes and enough work experience. For example, if you have, for instance, let's say we have experience on Corel Paint Shop, for example, they might want somebody from that you might work on graphic design, so.
Awesome. Well, I do want to just point out, I'm going to talk a little bit about the logistics here. The CPEC Job Fair, you can find all this information. You can find employers. You can find more information about the fair itself at cpec.info. It's going to take place on Tuesday, February the 20th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Radisson Hotel Harrisburg in Camp Hill, less than 10 minutes from the campus of Summerdale. You've also mentioned that you will provide transportation for those who do not have transportation, and they can reserve that by emailing you, Steve?
Yes, they can email me, Steve Hassinger, at centralpenn.edu, or email Career Services at centralpenn.edu. That'll go to all of us in Career Services. let us know that you want to go to the job fair and that you need transportation, and we'll talk to you about your schedule. And we'll be running the van back and forth as needed throughout that time from 10 to 3, probably at least 3 trips back and forth if we have enough students that need transportation.
And resumes are required. So when
Correct.
you show up, you will have to have a resume.
Correct.
So that is one thing right now. If you're sitting out there and you're thinking, man, I really want to go to this job fair, you have to have a resume. And of course, again, Steve, that's a service that you offer. So
Absolutely.
again, you can email Steve Hassinger at centralpenn.edu. Have him just look over it. I remember talking to you off air, and you'd mentioned that a typical resume sort of consultation is anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes on
Right.
average.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to take you a long period of time. And again, you have the resources if someone's just starting out with the resume.
We
So.
do.
So CPEC Job Fair coming up on February the 20th. We are going to do everything we can to continue to promote this, but no registration required, but you are going to have to show up with a resume from one of the consortium schools. What about alumni, Steve?
Alumni are also invited to attend for free. Alumni can attend any of our career services events for free, because once they graduate from Central Penn, we don't just cut them loose. They can always access our services and come to our events.
And that's honestly one of the most surprising things that I tell students, early on in freshman seminar, or even in some of my other classes. Once you're a student or graduate, you have access to everything that Career Services offers. So.
Correct.
So thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you so much, Steve, today for joining us. It was really an interesting discussion here about CPEC, and I look forward to seeing all of you there. Certainly for students that are concerned about their class schedule, certainly you can talk to your professors. Most professors are very understanding about having this be some type of excused absence, but do try to, well in advance. Don't wait till the day of or after the fact to talk to them about it. Explain to them how important this is to you, and most professors are willing to work with you. So, all right, so we will be right back on the Nightly News podcast with newly crowned Central Penn Nightly News president, Brian Christiana. But in the interim, for Sharon Kelly, Sharon, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And for Steve Hassinger, Career Services Director, Steve, thank you as always.
I always appreciate it. Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome, and we'll be right back with the Nightly News podcast. Save the date for the upcoming Humanities Film Series featuring 3 of our Humanities and Sciences faculty doing a broadcast commentary on movies that meant a lot to them in their past. They're going to do a little talk back, and they're also going to present the film and take a question and answer session afterward. On January 26th, Jared Reif will present Jaws. On April 27th, Professor Paul Miller, that's me, will present The Big Lebowski. And on July 27th, Dr. Marcy Roven will feature Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So save the date for those wonderful film series presentations. Welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. We are very fortunate to be joined today by our newly elected Nightly News Media Club president, Brian Christiana. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir, for having me today.
Well, certainly not a problem. One of the things that we wanted to chat about today is I wanted to give you the opportunity to come down to the studio today and to talk a little bit more about some of the new initiatives that you have for the Nightly News Podcast. Obviously, you won our most recent election. Obviously, Sherry Long passing the torch over to you. And I know that you're very honored to be the new Nightly News Media Club president. What does it mean to you to represent our club across the college and outside of the college and the community?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think that this is a huge step for not just myself, but for all of my colleagues and friends here at the school. I'm very honored, as you said. I take this with very much pride. I've been telling everybody around in the area, even back up north, that I've been and I've also been sharing the Facebook page a lot. So, yeah, this is a really big deal for me. It really is.
So you are currently a sophomore.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about your background and maybe why you chose Central Penn College and how you started getting involved in the media club.
Well, I was born and raised in Schmelken, Pennsylvania, which is up north by Knoebels Amusement Resort in Elysburg. I attended Lord's Regional High School in Cole Township. Did the sports, did theater, did all that type of stuff in school. I decided to go to Central Penn College because I felt like the smaller class sizes here was really what was best for me. When I went to Lord's, I graduated with 32 kids, and that was, I think, the perfect size for me because I'm getting that one-on-one attention that's really needed. And the big schools just, I mean, it would have been nice, but I think this is the perfect size for me. It really is.
Well, a lot of, I talk to a lot of students about why they come to Central Penn, and I do a little Q&A, I guess, in freshman seminar whenever I go around and I ask students. And between the class sizes and the accelerated schedule are always two of the big things that people always mention. Now, I mean, I went to Slippery Rock University, larger than Central Penn, but certainly not on par with your major schools. And I still had classes that were 100+ people, and I, now that I'm a professor, I would love to know how these professors do it because it's challenging with 30.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we do have about a 16 to 1 faculty to student ratio, which is one of the main reasons that a lot of people do come here. And you mentioned about this one-on-one attention. I mean, has it come to fruition? Do you get that one-on-one attention that you crave?
Oh, definitely. I feel like I communicate with my professors a lot. I would say I talk to you a lot, Professor Michael Lear-Olympi, Professor Janet Bitzler all the time. This is actually the first time I ever had David Baker as a teacher also. He's been getting back to me very frequently. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot because teachers are very busy here, and having them respond so quickly in a good manner, I'm very appreciative for that.
Well, and we're also very approachable, and we do, certainly in the club as well, provide the one-on-one attention too. So you're taking advantage of multiple areas where not only you can work with a professor in class, but you can also work with them sort of in an extracurricular fashion. So what was it about the nightly news or even maybe communication as a whole that drew you to our program?
Well, I've been always watching TV, and I always SportsCenter, ESPN, Comcast, Fox Sports. It was all there. Originally I wanted to be a sports historian. I used to watch Stuart Scott back when he was alive. He used to host a show with his name was Charles Schwab, Stump the Schwab, and I used to be big into that. And ever since that, I was like, that's what I want to be when I'm older on TV with sports. And somehow I felt like I feel like this is the best route for me to do that.
Well, and the thing is, too, and I know I've talked to you off air about this quite a lot, but there are a lot of jobs in sports. Sports is blowing up. Even just looking at our own campus and our goal to live stream some of the home baseball games this year, because the technology has become more affordable and approachable, now a lot of schools are getting into this and need people to help. But even at a bigger level, I mean, you want to look at a University of Texas. They have their own network running 24-hour-a-day programming. You've got the Big Ten. You've got the SEC network. You've got all these different local regional, whether it's Comcast or AT&T or Fox Sports, a lot of regional sports as well. So it's not nearly as difficult to crack into the sports industry as maybe it once was. You don't have to go up to Bristol, Connecticut to be involved with, that type of thing with ESPN. So it's very important that you keep that in mind and that there is a lot of jobs out there, whether in front of the camera or behind the camera.
Yeah, I really feel like the communications field with sports is really going to get big. I really do. I just appreciate communications in general. So, yeah, whatever job I'm going to get, I'm going to make the most of it.
So back to the club here. What was it about what we do in the nightly news that made you not only be involved ever since pretty much the first day you came to campus, but want to be the president of the club? What was it about what we're doing that you believed in that much that you're willing to spend a lot of your time outside of class?
Well, my first ever encounter with the nightly news was actually in my first ever communications class with you. You brought up Nightly News Media Club. I'm like, you know what? This actually sounds pretty cool. So I found out I couldn't make my first meeting on campus, and I was just like, wow, this is really cool when I found out more information. And I was told by Curtis Volker and all these other people, you need to get involved with this because Paul Miller and Michael Lear-Olympi do such a great job with this club. I met Sherry Lond eventually. I met Ian Kemmer, Cy Pinthon, and Yuli, and they really got me involved. And I was very appreciative for them doing that. And ever since I was like, one day I want to run that show.
Well, you're very fortunate that you did have an opportunity. We are obviously, Sherry's graduated, Yuli, and is in her last term. Sai is in his next to last term. So it's really cool that you had the opportunity to spend some time with those people, because they are people that we're going to be eternally grateful to for the Nightly News. With that being said, though, I think it's time to start a new legacy here with you, sir. So let's talk a little bit more about what things do you want to see coming up. I know that we already talked in the article that we wrote right after you won. So what are your initiatives? So this is a one-year position. What are some of your initiatives for 2018 with the Nightly News?
Well, the goal is, I said in my speech, I would like to keep up to date more. There's currently some basketball games coming up next week, and I brought up that I'd like to have at least somebody there to cover it. Michael Adamola said he will help out with that, which I'm very appreciative for, and I'm sure you are. Yeah, I want to get more involvement with the students. I mean, this is for students. This is for everybody to get involved with. So it's practice too. It's a good way to practice and get involved more.
Well, I mean, that's really what it is, Brian. I mean, part of what we're doing here is training you for what you're going to be expected to do once you leave school and venture into whatever career path you decide. One of the best things about our club is I think that we do and produce quality content. I think that we give everyone a solid opportunity, not only just to be involved with the podcast, but to write stories about things that are of interest to them. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think that we are very well positioned with some of our newer students. Between you and Megan Smith, who's also the secretary of the club, some of the new members that we've had come over the last 6 months or so, I think that we're in really good hands. And so now is the time where you step up and you take this leadership position and run with it. And I think that you've got the respect of your colleagues, and I think that it's a wonderful opportunity for you to sort of take the next level in developing your own resume and LinkedIn profile. So you said about some more of the breaking news element, and that's something that we absolutely are going to be working on. What are some other initiatives that you have for the club coming up?
Well, you just said about the broadcasting and then the journalism. I would like, as a fundraising point, I think that's really big as well. We're going to start selling subs. People, give us a buy if you would like to. The subs, the polos we just did. That was, just a little thing we did as a club, which I think is a really good step in the right direction. I think we should do more public relations work. As you said, the gala we'll be doing in March. I think we need to get involved more with the community, get our name out there. I'd like I said before, I like to share the Facebook. I want everybody to share that, get our name out there so we can grow as a team.
Well, and two, one of the things that we've been trying so hard to do is to do everything that we can to get our name out there. And I do like, and what you're referring to, Brian, is the American Lung Association. We just had Yuli, so fans of the podcast, Yuli just got done with an internship there. And when I did my site visit with her at the American Lung Association, they have a major gala coming up on March the 3rd. And we are going to be taking about 8 of our club members, including myself as well, to help them out for the evening. And it's something where I really think that not only are the students going to have a great opportunity to maybe network with some influential people, but it's just helping a great cause and something that we absolutely support as somebody who supports our Central Penn College students. So I think this is going to be very unique, being that this is the first time that we're going to do something like this under your watch, Brian. So.
Oh, yeah. And then, I forgot to also bring up, we have a new student member, her name Sharon Kelly. She has been very involved, and she talked to me personally about doing her own thing on the podcast. I said, you can go right ahead. You just need to talk to Professor, and she's working really hard with the club.
Well, and that's something else, too, that you guys were one of the first people to do your own podcast, and I'm absolutely willing to assist in any way that I can with the podcast and, make sure that the building is accessible to you, and I'll run the board for you first couple of times. And then really the rest is on you. So we have the equipment, we want to use it. So I think that not only are we getting involved in the community, Brian, we're also promoting, individual ideas that are maybe fall outside of the scope of the nightly news. So I think that very early on in your presidency, in fact, we are, as we record this, we're just a few days into your official presidency of the club. I think that we are in pretty good hands here.
Thank you, sir.
So let me just leave you with this. One final question that I want to chat with you about. Looking down the line, what do you think that this is going to mean to you in the future? When you look back on your experience here with the nightly news, what do you think and how do you think that this is going to line up with your future career goals?
Well, I think this is going to look back. I'm going to look back and just be like, wow, I had a great experience with good friends, good teachers, and all the people here at this college are making that real, I think, so far. I mean, you're right. I've only been here for a few days doing this, but I can tell you I take so much pride in this. I'm very honored. My friend Sean, he's the president of the Student Ambassadors, and he takes a lot of pride in his work too. And like I've gotten him to join because he wants to just help me out, and I've helped him out. So I mean, I want to help other students out so they can help me also.
Well, I think you're providing an excellent template of how to get involved with school because you are working outside of the club and your schoolwork, but you're working for iHeartMedia. So a very well-known company in the broadcasting industry. So you're not only are you getting the leadership experience here with the Nightly News, you're also putting your knowledge to good use outside of the classroom too. So Brian, by the time that you're done here, you're going to have a couple of years of experience with an internationally known company. You're going to be the president of our student news organization, and the sky's the limit for you. So you're not going to necessarily walk into necessarily an entry-level job, and certainly if that is a job that's of interest to you, you're going to walk right in and you're going to get the job because of the depth of experiences that you have between, iHeartMedia and what we've done here at not only the school, but with the Nightly News as well. So can you just tell us a little bit more about what you do with iHeartMedia?
Yeah, I work for the road crew and I run Board Op. I got hired because I have a good friend named Bob. He's from Shamokin, Pennsylvania as well, and he's actually like a huge celebrity up there. Whenever you talk about radio, it's, do you know Bobby Howard? Do you know Bob? And I've met so many great people because I attended a Zach Brown concert in the summer, Matchbox 20, which I saw you at. And I think this year I will be at Brantley Gilbert coming up in February and Harry Styles in June. So it's a really great opportunity. I met some great people. I'm very close with, like you said, the River people. Bob 94.9, they have been so welcoming. And the KISS 99.3, Samantha there, she's getting me involved with different stuff, and she's let me meet so many different people.
So obviously you've gone in many different directions, not only with the Nightly News, but in your position outside of school. And those things, you know what? You might not be making $1 million a year working with iHeartMedia, but that experience that you're getting is worth well more than what you're being paid, and I know that you know that. So, well, Brian, thank you so much for spending time with the Nightly News today, and obviously you'll be on podcasts throughout the term, but I did want to give you this outlet to talk a little bit more about what you have coming up in 2018. So any final thoughts that you have for the listeners?
Shamokin, this is for you guys. Thanks again.
All right. Well, for new Nightly News Media Club President Brian Christiana, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.